maybe I'll just start by sharing my story.
Great.
Jonathan. I grew up in the Virginia area, in Northern Virginia, and grew up going to church, but really my church experience was very much, it was more of knowing and finding out about God, but nothing real, nothing relational there. Very thankful for people who poured information into me about God. I certainly wouldn't have developed the right way without that, but for me, when I was in third grade, my parents got divorced. That was part of my story and part of my development. Obviously, that has a significant impact on any child when their parents break up like that. And when I was in high school, Young Life came to my high school. Young Life's an outreach ministry to high school age kids, and this was pretty significant because leaders came into the high schools and began building relationships with kids. And fortunately, I was one of those kids, and I got to hang out with these leaders who there was just something different about them. And what I began to realize was that they knew Christ, and they loved God, and had a heart for others to know Christ also. And so I remember just building this great relationship with them, inviting me to camp. I went to camp, and I literally remember as they walked through the gospel that week at camp thinking, why has no one ever told this to me before? And it was that week where I remember sitting and having some quiet time that they provided for us with the Lord, and just going, God, I know who I've been. I know in many ways I've tried to live my life on my own, but I know that life is really intended to be in relationship with you, where I kind of turn over the keys to my life to you, and that's where I began my relationship with Christ. And of course, it wasn't, I didn't get back, and everything was puppy dog tails and roses, of course, but it was it began a process in me of where God began to change my life, and really I think I was at a point in my life where I was really very much beginning to kind of live this double life, one foot in church, one foot kind of living the Chris Cockerham life, and doing things his way. And so that began this kind of destruction of that double life into more of who God had designed me to be.
Right. And we talk about that, time or moment as being an event. Absolutely. In people's life. Yeah. And that's one thing that we really emphasize at the mission is having that event. Mm-hmm. Whether these are volunteers, whether these are folks who are coming off the streets or whoever, that's one thing that we try to do is share the actual event where God took you from, Chris, as you know Chris to be, that's into, right. His kingdom, and you being his son. Absolutely. And his adopting you, as a child of God.
Absolutely.
And so we also call that born again.
But yeah, that's exactly right. And that was that experience for sure. And again, I didn't wake up and I wasn't full of light or anything like that. Right. That began a process of me. But there was that was a moment in time for me. Absolutely. From there, I got to kind of continue to grow through high school. And I will tell you that those continued relationships with those young life leaders made a significant impact as they just kind of continued to walk with me through that growth process. And I still continue to go to church, but really where my growth happened was outside of that, both walking alongside with them, learning to read the Bible, learning to kind of take that into my life. And then really one of the cool things was that they began to engage me in ministry almost right away or within a year or so, where they'd say, hey, we want you to begin to get this heart for your friend and invite your friends and bring them along and pray for your friends. And it was very cool. And when you look back, you go, no, that was part of God really, really growing me and stretching me, and really now as a pastor looking back going, that was part of him really breaking my heart for the things that break his heart, which is people, right. Lost people and people that don't know him. And so it's pretty cool as you begin to look back. And then as I went into college, I got the opportunity to be a Young Life leader, which was incredible, and I got to be a part of this great kind of missional community of people that were on the search team right. for lost and broken high school kids in the community, and got to lead there. Out of college, I got an opportunity to be on staff with the YMCA, which is a similar mission, and then Young Life again, where again God just continued to break my heart for those who didn't know him and were living outside of his family. Right. And you just learn so much when you begin to extend yourself that way. And then we started going to Hope Community Church probably 9 or so years ago. And one of the things that we immediately loved about Hope was its mission, that they were this vision and mission of idea of loving people right where they are, not feeling like they've got to clean up. I think sometimes either churches or culturally we kind of think like, oh, I've got to clean up.
Right. Got to act a certain
I got to act a certain way. I got to look a certain way. I've got to kind of have my life in order in order to come to church. And I love that Hope was just saying, no, just come as you are. We don't have these high expectations. We,
right.
if you're lost, if you don't have all the answers, if you're broken, if
right.
you've got doubts, if you've got fears, we want you here.
That's
and
right.
We love you right where you are. And then after that, we want to help you grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ, because we know that's where true satisfaction comes, when we're in this relationship with God the way we're designed to live. And so even as just an attender and then a member, we were just so in sync. My heart was just so in sync with what we were doing here.
Yeah.
Started volunteering in the kid ministry, and then at just the right time, I think Mike kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, we're launching this thing down in Holly Springs, and would you be interested in leading the team and pastoring this team down on this new campus we're going to launch down in Holly Springs? And that was in 2009, and we've been there about 4 years, and God's been very good.
Do you have any stories in particular maybe you can share of maybe somebody's life who's been changed through the Holly Springs campus?
Yeah. One that I feel like just always comes to mind is a young man who had just gotten divorced from his wife, pretty rough background with some addiction in his past, and really to kind of have a fresh start, moved back out here to North Carolina where his brother and sister-in-law live with his family. And he, when he first came, they were already attending, had already found the Holly Springs church, and they said, you know what you need is to get involved with church. And he said, oh no, I've done that before, and I'm not doing that again. And then he's a guy who's got tattoos, he's got some rings and stuff like that, and he said, I know every time I walk into a church, I know what they think of me.
Right.
And they said, well, not this church. They love people right where you are. And he said, all right, well, I'll give it one shot. And he says he remembers the day he walked in, and everybody just greeted him just as he was, and he walked in, got into the auditorium, and really connected with our teaching pastor that day, who had a great humility about him. He didn't assume that he had it all together, but really actually was very free and very transparent to say, I'm still working all this out too. And he was very humble and connected immediately that it wasn't someone on a high horse or who thought he had it all together. And to see his transformation, so we connected shortly after that. He kind of shared his story with me. I began to kind of just share with him my story, and we began to pray together. And before too long, he had accepted Christ.
Wow.
And was baptized, and got to celebrate with his family there, and to see his continual, just step-by-step progression has just been a beautiful picture of God's mercy, God's grace. I know sometimes if you just walk by this guy on the street, you think, man, God's arm is too short, man. He's too broken, he's too far gone. But this guy's heart has just been transformed and changed by Christ. And it's really beautiful. And that's one story, but that's happening in families and in marriages where God is working to restore, to bring new life. It's in children and in middle school kids. We've gone from having just about 40 or so middle school kids involved when we launched to now there's about 200 per week. And this is just where God's Spirit is just moving in kids to say, come and be a part of this thing. Come and be a part of this thing. This is where life is.
Right.
And it's really just been phenomenal to watch. It's to be on the front lines of what God's doing in the community.
Yeah. And that's what we talk about too. Is broken relationships are really what people when they come to the mission, especially, that's what they come out of. Whether that be spousal or someone in the family or whatever it may be. But the point is you take that broken relationship, and then you can point folks back to the fact that the real broken relationship they have is with God.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, that's what happened with the young man, is the fact that he had broken relationship with his wife, and then on top of it, he had kind of a bad idea of church and all those type of things. But But once, the church was there with open arms and willing to accept him where he was and not to look at him any differently because of any of that, he was able to then say, all right, well, maybe God doesn't look at me any differently either.
That's exactly
maybe God does look at me as something that's worthwhile, that even though I've screwed up life or made a mess of a situation, he's still willing to forgive and to soften my heart and to change me and to move me in a different direction and to give me new hope. And that's one thing I love about the name of the church, is the fact that it's hope.
It's a place for hope. Yeah.
And that's where we're at here. On earth, that's what we have, is hope.
Yeah.
Thankfully, when we're in heaven, we won't need hope anymore.
That's right.
We'll just have love.
Yeah.
So,
and I will say this: that's one of the things that I love about the Beacon Mission too,
mm-hmm.
is that they have such a similar heart, a similar mission that we do. That they just want to love people right where they are.
That's right.
They don't have these huge expectations, and really they meet people in probably one of the most vulnerable places in their lives, and just say, no, we want to love you the Father loves you.
That's right.
Right where you are.
Right.
And then we want to begin to build into you and pour into you and transform, or be a part of God transforming you.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we love about the Beacon Mission, and how powerful its mission is in loving people where they are and helping them grow.
Yeah, and we call it easy soul winning, because the fact of the matter is that people are coming out of horrendous situations.
Absolutely.
There's nobody who comes to you who has nothing, who is full of hope and joy, and life is treating them well. When was the last time, that when, let's say you got into a car accident, when was the last time you were jumping for joy? These people are just not coming out of a good situation. And so they are vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. They are broken. They are hurting. They have no other place to turn. And to be able to give them, just simple housing and give that to them for free and say there's no charge for anything here. All we want to do is give you a place that's safe, that you can have a shelter over your head so you can go out and find work and get plugged back into life and get the basics taken care of. And, and then from there, once that starts happening, then you can really start sharing the gospel with them, because life is moving up. And that's just, that's where it's at. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, glad to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.